So the IMF recently came out with a report where they said that the world was subsidizing fossil fuels by $5.2 trillion in 2017, which is about 6.5% of global GDP. And Robinson Meyer in the Atlantic, which is not exactly fossil fuel friendly publication, he has a really interesting article where he kind of digs into what's behind those numbers. And he points out that if you just looked at what people usually mean by subsidy, which is the government is transferring cash or giving it kind of tax benefit to a company, the number is only $296 billion globally. And so there's a question, well, how does the report justify inflating that number 17 times over? And Meyer points out that what they do is they have this thing called post tax subsidies. And this is a subsidy that reflects the difference between actual consumer fuel prices and the alleged full societal and environmental costs of a fuel. And so the way Meyer puts it is that the burning of fossil fuels releases deadly air pollution, hastens the destruction of the climate, and sometimes increases traffic fatalities. And since all of these things kill people, they also depress a country's tax base. And so he says, like if you include that, that's another 4.9 trillion or 94% of the total. And I mean, the thing is, like, these are not like the side effects of fossil fuels are not subsidies. Like, they're a side effect of a legitimate use of freedom, or at least they can be if you have a country with the right laws. And I mean, the same way you're not getting a subsidy if you get sick and then go to the grocery store and someone else gets sick. And it uh, even I think more revealing, it doesn't take into account the difference between actual fuel prices and the full benefits of fossil fuels. Like, it doesn't say how many this is my point, not Myers, but it doesn't say how many taxpayers are alive and wealthier because of fossil fuels who wouldn't be without them. And it's even worse than that because a lot of the costs are just completely made up. So, for just example, Meyer himself, who's not a quote climate denier, he notes that when it comes to assessing the costs of climate change, that the report, in his words, somewhat arbitrarily just decided that each additional ton of carbon in the atmosphere imposes $40 of global costs. And so that this is just a completely misleading report that I mean, I don't think has anything meaningful to say, except for it's good to know that the world has $296 billion of subsidies that are going to fossil fuels.
So, I mean, when you see these kinds of statistics, like fossil fuels have this much in subsidies, one question is what's the purpose of displaying this kind of statistic or featuring this kind of statistic? And in this case, I believe it's a combination of at least two things. One is to reinforce the narrative that fossil fuel use is incredibly negative, and then two, and related, is to give the idea that fossil fuels are easily replaceable and that there are equal or superior substitutes if only we do certain things politically. And in this case, they're not even saying, "Oh, we need a green new deal, we need to take control of the economy." It's just, "Oh, well, we just have to stop subsidizing fossil fuels, and then we'll have an amazing green energy economy." And so in this with both of these points, it's just they're using numbers and what the idea of hidden costs or externalities to distort the reality. And the reality is that fossil fuels play an amazingly positive role in our lives. They're the reason why uh, we live as long as we do. And there's no real way to compute how much value we get, like to put that in dollars, to talk about, billions of people having longer life expectancies and more opportunities. It's so fundamental to our way of life. I mean, you could assign I mean, you could say it's $500 trillion, and that's probably true in some certain kind of sense. So it's they're trying to use numbers to get away from that fossil fuels play this incredibly positive role in our lives because they're ultimately they empower us, so they give us the ability to transform our environment from a pretty hostile place to a very friendly place. And then two, they are uniquely good at playing that role. The reason why we use them is not just, oh, some conspiracy or some subsidies. It's that the fossil fuel industry is the only industry that's figured out how to efficiently provide cheap, plentiful, reliable energy for billions of people for all the ways they need power, from heating to mobility to electricity to industrial uses. And if we don't take seriously the context that fossil fuels play an amazingly positive overall role and that they are very, very difficult to substitute for, and really they have no global substitutes in the foreseeable future, then we're going to make horrible decisions. So, and anyone who's kind of in the realm of economics, they should be, when they're using numbers, those numbers should be in the service of conveying reality, not distorting reality.